Welcome, friends. Please silence your phones. Today's presentation is on silence. Next Sunday, there will be a presentation on what is fire, followed by a continuation of roundtable readings and discussions every first and third Sunday. We are currently discussing the Bhagavad Gita. This coming Saturday, June 2nd, from 1 to 4:30 p.m., all are invited to 1917 Walnut Street, Philadelphia, ULT, for a special exploration of ancient myths for the New Age, a gathering of timeless truth and practical wisdom from Northern Europe, the Middle East, India, and America. All work of this lodge is aimed at passing on, in their purity, teachings of the ancient message from the Masters of Wisdom that H.P. Blavatsky named Theosophy. It is left to each of us, in our own way, to assimilate this powerful and common sense message, thus making it a living power in our lives. We all have a role in ushering in the golden age for humanity, or postponing it with our every thought and action. Please help with your attendance on Sundays at 11 a.m. or whatever you can do to help keep alive and thriving these uplifting teachings that are necessary for the future of humanity. We are located in the Washington, D.C. area at 4865A Cordell Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland, 20814. We are guided by the declaration that Robert Crosby used in 1909 to launch ULT and return the teachings to the lines laid down by the great founders through their messenger, H.P. Blavatsky, and her staunch colleague, William Q. Judge. To this end, we work independently and with each other to achieve a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. We hold that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching. We have neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers. The sole bond between us associates is the furtherance of unity. We regard as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. And we welcome to our association all those who are in accord with the purposes in our declaration, and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. Today's reading is from selections from the Upanishads and Tao Te Ching. To Janaka, king of the Vadihas, came Yajnavalkya, determined not to speak openly with the king. But when Janaka, king of the Vadihas, and Yajnavalkya debated together at the offering of the holy fire, Yajnavalkya offered the king a wish. The king chose to ask questions according to his desire. Yajnavalkya assented, and the king first asked, Yajnavalkya, what is the light of the spirit of man? The sun is a light, O king, he answered. With the sun as a light, he rests, goes forth, does his work, and returns. This is so in truth, Yajnavalkya. But when the sun is set, Yajnavalkya, what is then the light of the spirit of man? The moon then becomes a light, he answered. With the moon as a light, he rests, goes forth, does his work, and returns. This is so in truth, Yajnavalkya. But when the sun is set, Yajnavalkya, what, and the moon is also set, what is then the light of the spirit of man? Fire then becomes his light, he answered. With fire as his light, he rests, goes forth, does his work, and returns. This is so in truth, Yajnavalkya. But when the sun is set, Yajnavalkya, and the moon is also set, and the fire sinks down, what is then the light in the spirit of man? Voice then becomes his light, he answered. With voice as his light, he rests, goes forth, does his work, and returns. Therefore, in truth, O king, when a man cannot distinguish even his own hand, where a voice sounds, thither he approaches. This is so in truth, Yajnavalkya. But when the sun is set, Yajnavalkya, and the moon is also set, and the fire sinks down and the voice is still, what is then the light in the spirit of man? The soul then becomes his light, he answered. With his soul as a light he rests, goes forth, does his work, and returns. What is the soul? It is a consciousness in the life powers. It is a light within the heart. And now for today's talk, silence.
Good morning and welcome, friends. When we undertake to study the Secret Doctrine, the Isis Unveiled, and the other Theosophical books, we are in a way promising ourselves to follow a particular path which will eventually open to us the inner life of the soul. And we just read from the Upanishads that in order to achieve that, silence has to be learned. So when we look around today to our modern society in the West, we notice that a lot of media opportunities have come forth for communication among people. But if we analyze it, is it for the good, or has it also done a tremendous damage to our society? It is stated in the writings that the greatest of evils which modern society is corrupted by is gossip. In other words, injurious speech or small talk ensouled by the spirit of competition not only ruins other people's character, but also corrupts our own. This fact is not recognized. So small talk has become, and is studied sort of as an art. Infamy of gossip has emerged as an institution of social amusement. Its infamous nature is forgotten, its dire effects fail to impart their lesson, and it has assumed for modern men and women the place of necessity of life. So, when we are using all these media advantages, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, texting, we need to be aware of what we are doing, because we are really using speech in written form. So the first requirement in the path of a spiritual life, which all of the Theosophical students have undertaken, is to learn the value of silence. Conservation of spiritual energy demands that frittering away of soul forces be put a stop to. So there are very few avenues through which man's divinity goes to waste, and speech and sound is one of them. And unfortunately, in the modern age, this is very true. So then, the dirt and sort of dregs of our karmic nature often find their outlet in useless or injurious speech. There is a close connection with that statement that what we put in our mouth as food and what comes out as words is connected. So the process of eating, assimilation of food, and elimination occurs, and the health of the body improves or suffers as a result of it. One of the main ways of determining the condition of the body is to examine the disposition and the process and product of elimination. Our psychic nature is similar in this way, that it has its own way of assimilation and elimination in sustaining good or ill health. One of the modes of elimination of our psychic nature is related to the power of speech. So we need to become aware that in this growth, learning and listening go together. They come before teaching and speaking. In the olden times, as well as today, when the seeker for peace or wisdom resolved to follow in the footsteps of the Guru, the pupil gained the name of Shravaka, a listener. And we'll put this word up here. Shravaka. Listener. And the Greek equivalent of that is acoustikos. Acoustikos. And at this stage, the student was not permitted to talk at all. He was given Bija sutras. These are seed sutras. Bija, seed sutras. And he went home and tried to read it, understand it, and assimilate it on his own. He was not permitted to talk. And this he did according to the best of his ability. He did not get help from anywhere else. So this process was intended to be used as purifying food, and if it was adequately assimilated, it would cleanse our karmic nature. So it will cleanse the karmic nature. And remove the accumulated poisons of the past and reveal to the student or pupil the correct alchemical process of transformation within his own constitution, whereby passion was converted into compassion, is converted to compassion, lust into love, and antipathy into sympathy. And this is occurring within the student's own nature. And so once we start on this path or highway, we soon enough become an exerciser or a positive doer. And of course then Shravaka becomes Shramana, a doer. We'll put it up here. Shramana, who's a doer, an active person. And of course the acousticos of the Greeks become asketos, and we'll put it here, asketos, which means a doer. So a modern student of today must come to understand the occult significance of silence. And in order to do that, he has to learn to become silent by choice during the day. So that means self-imposition of periodic silence. Whatever time the student wants to assign to this practice, he does it with his own will, with his own choice, and whatever time is suitable for himself. That's the first one, self-imposition of periodic silence. The second one is not indulging at any time in injurious and untruthful speech. So, periodic silence and not indulging in injurious or untruthful speech. 3 then would be not at all giving into useless speech, just empty chatter, useless speech. Number 4 would be not asking questions on philosophy or practice on any subject that we have been taught before we have fully looked into it and tried to understand it in view of our particular question first. Number 5 is not to get involved at all in ahankaric speech. And ahankaric speech is not making statements about our divine self or ego in terms of our kamic or lower nature. Number 6 would be not getting involved or indulging ourselves in injurious speech regarding our lower nature. In other words, not to talk about our faults or weaknesses, lest by speaking of them we give it a strength, because power of speech is strength. It will strengthen these faults if we give it power. And 7, not to speak even of what is true unless it is at the proper time, to the proper people, and under proper circumstances. So then this sevenfold this sevenfold practice then has to be undertaken in secrecy and observed. If we refer to it or speak about it to other people, we just about make it useless. It would be of no value, because such a practice gives birth to conceit, and it enhances it when it already is there. So secrecy and silence go together. They have a kinship, and this needs to be understood by the student. And in this modern age of ours, there is a tendency for people to want to sit for yoga, meditation. But this first rule that we have just talked about primary regulation of the speech, which leads to silence, is found undesirable and as an inconvenience, and so it is not followed. However, in order to obtain control over our speech, it is necessary that we undertake that practice. And in this modern age where chatter is everywhere, this nation has become a nation of chatterers, it obviously is very difficult for individuals to learn to control their speech. But if not fully, at least partially, it needs to be applied. Now, Mr. Crosby has a recommendation in our controlling speech. He says control is the power of direction, and when exercised in one way, it leads to its exercise in other ways until it covers the whole field of operation. So a way to control a speech then is to think of its effect and make it a deliberate effort as to what we are going to say. This then enforces our intention in speech, and this becomes purposive speech. And he says the laws of Manu in controlling speech is very useful. The recommendation is let him say what is true. Let him say what is true. Let him say what is useful. Let him say what is pleasant. What is pleasant? Let him utter no disagreeable truth. No disagreeable truth. This comes from learning where our audience is and what people's basic understanding stands at. Let him utter no agreeable falsehood. No agreeable falsehood. In other words, in order to please other people, we do not change our stand about truth. And of course, Mr. Judge's admonition, let us use with care those living messengers called words. So now, as we are continuing on with this practice that we talked about in 7 steps, the first thing that we will notice is that our speech becomes deliberate. the speech becomes deliberate. Deliberate. And this is not rooted in kama passion, but in buddhi compassion. So we talked about that a little bit. So it's not kama passion, but buddhi compassion. So this deliberate speech is changing alchemically our own constitution. And we're told there are two types of criticism. One is fault finding, and the other one is perception of virtue. Perception of virtue. And also that perception that comes in knowing what is under vice, demerit, and weakness. It is stated that the seat of the dice is Shri Krishna, and the power to perceive that comes from the second type of that statement we just made. Criticism, which comes from buddhi compassion. Okay, let us make a list and see what the difference is as our karmic nature is changing into buddhi compassion. We said, and I'm going to take this off, there are two ways of criticism. One is fault finding, and the other one, we called it perception of virtue. Perception of virtue. Okay. Fault finding is usually criticism by words of kama. So we'll just put words of kama. We're criticizing the personality by using words that our karmic nature brings forth. But if we are on the other side of the equation, perception of virtue, these words that we utter come from understanding. So these words are words of understanding. Understanding. So, word of understanding. What plane are we on when we are talking about this? Obviously, our karmic nature, as you know, uses the lower mind with all of the lower aspects of the human soul. The other does not. So we're on the plane of words. Plane of words. Where are we when we talk from buddhi compassion? We're on the plane of ideas. Plane of ideas. And when we're fault finding in others, it comes from head learning. Head learning. What about the Buddhism aspect of us? It comes from soul wisdom. Buddhi is our spiritual soul. It's wise. So our words express wisdom. This then, in this section, if we are coming from fault finding, we're praising or condemning the lower nature. Praises or condemns. Lower nature. We said our kamic nature, right? Kama, passion. The other one, the buddhi, compassion, imports into the sentence the strength of the higher and causes readjustment. So this one imports into our statement the strength of the higher. Causing readjustment. This is very important to understand. Causing readjustment. Readjustment. So, the fault finding comes because we think we have learned superior spirit of teaching. Teaching. Remember what we said at the beginning? Shravaka. We have to become a listener first, then we become a Shramana, which is a doer, which is able to give what he has learned. So, and the other is sublime spirit of learning. This one. Sublime spirit of learning. Sublime spirit of learning and propagating that which is learned. Spirit of learning and giving what was learned. What was learned. So it's very important to understand as to what we are doing with our speech. So, if we were to practice this in our society, imagine what kind of change it would bring to us. Instead of looking for condemnation or points of criticism, which is the comic side, then we would look for beauty, goodness, and the worth of what is being said or written. Because we said at the beginning that the expression through virtue also understands what's behind vice, demerit, and weakness. And this is where the sublime spirit of readjustment comes, when we interject into our statements what the need is. In other words, buddhi, compassion is expression of that word, so that readjustment can be made. So instead of looking for our own thoughts, feelings, and action being repeated by others in producing similar feelings and actions, in other words, we want them to imitate what we want done. And here, on this side, we're the model. We express others to follow what we are saying. That it has nothing to do with the expression of truth. So that pattern we follow has to be changed from inside out, and we need to move from fault finding to perception of virtue in all that is being thought, said, and done around us. So such a change in attitude would bring tremendous change in societal norm. This statement comes from Thomas Carlyle. He says, "Thou who wearest that cunning heaven-made organ, a tongue, think well of this. Speak not, I passionately entreat thee, till thy thought has silently matured itself, till thou have other than med and med-making noises to emit. Hold thy tongue, till some meaning lie behind, to set it wagging. Consider the significance of silence. It is boundless, never by meditating to be exhausted, unspeakably profitable to thee. Cease that chaotic hubbub, wherein thy own soul runs to waste. Out of silence comes thy strength. Speech is silvern, silence is golden. The speech is human, silence is divine." Speech, silver, silence, golden. And it is our responsibility to bring the golden age into this dark Kali Yuga. Fool, thinkest thou that because no Boswell is there, in other words, no one is there with the skin and blackened black lead to know thy jargon, it therefore dies and is harmless. Nothing dies, nothing can die. No idlest word thou speakest, but is a seed cast into time and grows through all eternity. The recording angel, consider it well, is no fable, but the truest of truths. The paper tablets thou canst burn, of the iron leaf there is no burning. And repeatedly we are told that whatever we think, whatever we say, whatever we do is recorded. And here is Carlyle talking about a recording angel, and this is the truth. Nothing dies, nothing disappears. In this philosophy, karma and reincarnation has to be remembered as a fact of nature, and that everything we do, we're responsible for it. It will come back to us, if not in this incarnation, in others. And we will finish it by Mr. Warrior's statement, where he says, 100 plunge into the waters of the ocean for pleasure or profit, to only one who dives into that ocean for the pearl of great price. The latter does his work in secrecy of silence. His art in the ocean is of a different kind, from that of the ordinary swimmer. Those who are in search of the pearl of wisdom must acquire the strength of muscle, the control of breath, and the finesse of stroke necessary against the stormy billows of this ocean of samsara. These lie securely hidden in the power of silence. They must invoke that power not by a pledge to some other being, but by a vow silently sung and silently registered in the sanctuary of the heart. That path begins in silence and secrecy and ends in hearing and the chanting of the soundless sound. And the voice of the silence tells us that when we have learned to quieten ourselves, that's the time when we shall hear the sound of the heart, or the soundless sound. And now we will stop here and answer your questions.
This sounds like advice through the ages. It really doesn't change, but the question is, back then, that media, you mentioned media earlier on, was not like it is today. All the tweeting going on and that kind of thing. Should we be trying to take advantage of that to spread the message, make it more understandable, the message of Theosophy?
The question is, should we use the modern media to spread Theosophy and make it more understandable?
That's certainly part of the question.
Well, as you know, HPB during her lifetime was looking for students that she could inform, and she initiated her magazine Lucifer, and she said this was not just to disseminate the philosophy, but also for those who were interested to become known. And at that time, she used whatever was available to her in dissemination of that philosophy. Today's media is different, but we can still utilize it appropriately in disseminating the philosophy. What has been brought to our attention in this short talk is that we must not fritter away our soul energy in wasteful speech. It does not say not to use deliberate speech. In disseminating the truthful message of Theosophy to the West, who are in need of it very badly, so that deliberate speech can be used to disseminate Theosophy through different media. What we cannot do is be wasteful with our speech. It didn't say not to use deliberate speech, because when we have become silent and we are actually learning internally, that is when you can unlock what the voice of the silence, what the Secret Doctrine, what the key, and what Isis Unveiled has a store in it for us. Any other way, it's just an intellectual study. When that speech becomes deliberate, it means that you're attuned to your inner life, that impulse is coming from inside out, and it is not going in from outside. So you're using soul force in the dissemination, and what is really needed is that.
How do you change, how do you assess your audience? Let's say, know your audience. It's no chit chat, no small talk or whatever. I guess we need to have even some chit chat at times, but if it's deliberate, you're trying to get to understand where the other person is coming from. It really is a chit chat.
Well, this talked
gets
about
them kind of away from the direct message.
chit chat is not a recommended way of dissemination, because in this particular application of useless speech, we're talking about injurious speech, small talk, which ruins people's character because it takes on the aroma of gossip. That is what she's talking about. Because at her period of the dissemination, people did not read what she was bringing out into the world, but they were just criticizing her because it was a totally different application that humanity was not at all familiar with. And so the criticism, and also she was talking the truth. She was giving the message from the Master's Lodge and bringing it into the world. She says, I'm only the recorder. It is not my philosophy I'm giving. This philosophy has been gathered and retained in its purity for thousands and thousands of years, and only now a little corner of it has been lifted. So even though it is called the Secret Doctrine, it is the secret doctrine of the secret doctrine of the ages, but only a very small portion of it has been given out. There was tremendous opposition to it at that time because it disturbed the balance in society. People had fallen into their grooves and did not want to face the truth that was being given out. Perhaps they also did not study it, because her students who studied it understood its meaning, understood the value to society, understood that it needed to be promulgated and given out to the world because the world is in need of it, especially the West. And of course, theologians were after her who did not understand what she was doing, because she was criticizing all of the religions of the world, because she brought all the shortcomings of religion to the forefront at that time. And she said that the Christian religion especially was very pernicious. And this student understood what she was getting at. But if you're blindfoldedly following something and you don't want to be jerked out of your comfort zone, you would obviously condemn what she was saying. And this is the gist of it. It is pernicious because it puts the human being at the mercy of a God which is external. Whereas in this philosophy, there is no such thing. There are gods, there are powers of nature, there are classes of beings, hierarchies of beings that give human beings all that he is, all of the principles. There is a central spiritual sun where all of our soul energy comes from. There is a spirit, there is unity, there is brotherhood. These were all very, very different ideas at that time. And the perniciousness comes from also taking the responsibility away from people. I am responsible for my thinking, for my speech, and for my actions, as every other human soul is. But the Christian religion takes that responsibility away and condemns us through sin to either heaven or hell, which in the 21st century has no place, because humanity, she says, will grow, the mind will expand. She crushed that limited scope of the mind when she was on the scene and gave us a tremendous opening of perspective into the truth of what appears phenomenally in our universe. If we study the Secret Doctrine in sincerity, in time, it reveals slowly what it holds between the lines or between the words, however you want to express it. It does not reveal its secrets very easily. However, human beings are responsible, and when you say that there's an external being you have to bow to, you're taking that responsibility away from the human soul. Also, perfectibility is removed. Perfectibility cannot be achieved in one lifetime. So there it is. Karma and reincarnation. Without that, there is no perfectibility. And this is what the church removes from the possibility of the human soul reaching perfectibility at some time when the soul has awakened to its inner life and follows this path of purification, learning, understanding, promulgation, in other words, service to humanity. And the keepers of these truths are the greatest philanthropists around, because they are all perfected human beings. They have gone through the same difficulties according to their own karma, and eventually learn to control and remove all of the defects from their nature, allowing that light, the central that comes from the central spiritual sun and is in each heart, to express itself with no impediments in its way. So this is what humanity's future is. What the future holds for us is the same possibility that the masters of wisdom have already achieved for themselves. So if we take this away from humanity, we're doing a tremendous disservice to that humanity. So
is it a delicate balance to say what is pleasant and also to bring something out that is basically against the grain of the majority of people?
Well,
I think that what you're talking about with respect to Christianity.
Well, Christianity is the most pernicious because of this, that you are forgiven at death. There is no such rule in nature. But even though there is no such rule, there is no such rule that you're not going to be given an opportunity to put your act right when you so determine that it needs to be corrected, or that karma will not give you a second chance in the future for you to learn from that error you have made. That also is missing, because there is no such thing that you're going to be on this earth one time. Human beings have been in evolution for a very, very long time, millions of years. So when you decide where your audience is, we can say all these things because it also says not to utter a pleasant untruth. So if you cannot say the truth, perhaps it's not the correct place to say it at. But it doesn't mean you're going to change the truth to fit the audience. What you cannot say, it's best you don't say. What you can say it in a pleasant manner that is not offensive to the audience. But it does not say to change the truth into falsity. It says also not to utter a pleasant untruth.
So you just said it. You say the truth, but you might say it in different ways depending on the audience.
You say it in a pleasant way, not in an aggressive way, because I think R.C. In his article had said that the argumentative attitude is of little value to theosophy, because it amounts for each human being endeavoring to uphold his own position towards the other one, undermining in a calculated way the opponent's position, where the truth is kind of camouflaged. So in order to say the truth, you have to be truthful first to yourself, because that guidance is coming from inside. Then say it in a pleasant way that is not offensive to the audience. And if you cannot say it at all, it says just hold your tongue until it is mature. It has matured, and it is not making med-making sounds, but it is making pleasant sounds. Thank you.